Jeff was selected by Bamboo HR and engaged Lee as one of the top 100 HR influencers and has been featured in New York Times, Mashable, Upworthy, Shondaland, and Wired. Jeff has worked with Google, Microsoft, Southwest Airlines, Adobe, the NFL, Amazon, and Facebook, helping the staff to infuse more play into the day-to-day. While we spend most of our time pretending to be important, serious grown-ups, it's when we get to let go of that facade and just play that the real magic happens. Fully embrace your own nerdy genius, whatever that is, gives you the power to make a difference and change lives. Samm Smeltzer has been playfully referred as the unicorn. This comes from her eternal optimism for the possibilities of what the workplace could be. For the last decade, Samm has passionately pursued a journey to discover the missing elements for employee engagement within organizations. This path has primarily led her to studies in spirituality and Eastern medicine, discovering how much of a role having a professional purpose and passion is essential to employees. Please welcome me in welcoming Jeff Harry and Samm Smeltzer.
Woo. There you go. Thank you.
So I don't look dumb when I start talking, right? All right. Good morning, everyone. Thank you. Or I guess we're at that tipping point to afternoon, right? Good morning, good afternoon. Thank you so much for being here today. I'm obviously Samm Smeltzer, and this is Jeff Harry, and we're here to talk about how to make work suck less.
Ooh, seriously. Seriously.
Yes. So Jeff and I actually live on opposite sides of the country, met on a podcast, and then saw some common themes happening in our work individually and decided to collaborate and create this presentation. And now for a year, we've been traveling the country and sharing this presentation with HR audiences all over the place. In fact, I was just in the car saying, I think this is our last one for this year, and I'm a little bittersweet. So we get to share that with you. The other thing that I want to throw out there is that we are really excited to be in Salt Lake City. And Jeff read that this is like the soda shop capital of the US.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right?
Which all of you seem to know, but not a lot of you frequent soda shops. So at lunch, if you have something to add about where we should stop,
yes,
we need the information because we can only go to one because I don't think our stomachs can handle all of them and then get on planes. So we're really intrigued by that. So with that, I'm going to pass it to Jeff.
Yeah, so two things. If you want to hang out with us after, just connect with us via LinkedIn. But the other reason, the motivation why we started this in the first place is when we traveled around the country, like we've done this at National SHRM in Atlanta, and we're doing it in Michigan and all these other places. When we talked to people, they were like, work sucks right now. Like for so many people, it just straight sucks. Like 75 to 85% of people are disengaged at work. They're just not having fun. And I don't know if you felt this, but how many of you have had the conversation where like, I just don't want to work anymore? People are like, I don't feel like working. Like I have no desire to do work. Can I just live and not work? So we were like, okay, we can't address that part, but we can at least take the pain away. And how do we do that? What is first the biggest problem? The biggest problem we found is there are a lot of systems that are broken. And how can we actually infuse more empathy, compassion, and shared humanity into these so that we can actually fix them? So today we're more of a playful bunch, so we want engagement as much as possible. So if you have a piece of paper and a pen, we want you to pull that out. If you don't, then pull out your phone, but don't look at your email. Don't start checking start doing some work. But I'm going to ask you a question, and I want you to write this down. So this is the first question that we want you to explore. I don't know what that is, so I'm going to run over here. Let's see if this works. There we go. We'll figure that out. So I want you to ask yourself, what value do you bring to your organization? Why are you so dope? Why are you so amazing? Why do they pay you the money that they pay you? What would happen if you left? What would it crumble? Would it fall? Like, what is the best thing that you do at your work? And if you need to, write down more than one. Like, feel free to brag a bit. Write down all of the best things that you can possibly think of. All right, I'll give you about 5 more seconds. Okay, so we're going to do something a little bit different. So we don't celebrate enough. I feel like we don't celebrate how awesome we are. So in a moment, this is what we're going to do. You are going to stand up. So go ahead, stand up right now, just to get up. And what you're going to do, and we're only going to do this for like 60 seconds, but I want you to walk up to someone and share your awesome thing. So in my case, I'll be like, I help people not quit. I've saved like at least 20 jobs this year. Boom. And then I give a high five. Sam, what do you do awesome?
I make people feel like they're actually humans by having them be seen and heard.
Boom. High five. Find the next person. Find as many people in 60 seconds starting now. Let's go. 60 seconds. 60 seconds. Let's do it. Let's go. What value do you bring to your organization? Celebrate it. Celebrate. Why are you so awesome?
I make sure that people don't get tortured at work.
What do we got here? Oh my God, you are bringing happiness to people's lives. Let's keep going. Find another person. Find another person.
I help.
What do we got? What do we got?
Feel like they're valued and help their
Chief
employees.
morale officer.
Oh my gosh, I love that. The chief morale off CMO. You're the CMO. What do we got? What do we got?
I'm really good at engaging employees.
Yes, you are. Yes, high five. What do we have?
I'm a creative problem solver and a listener.
What? What do we got, Sue?
I let people know that they are heard.
Dude, what are we doing? Let's go. What do we got over here, Barbara? Let's go. It is a Lego tie. All right, all right. Find one last person and then find a seat. Find a seat. Woo. Oh, there we go. Other way, other way, other way. Oh, yeah, okay. So down, down. Remember, down, down is the one. Okay. All right, everyone. All right, how was that? How was that for you? How was that? How many people found that enjoyable? Raise your hand if you found that enjoyable. How many people found that awkward? Like, that's fucking weird. So weird. Like, what am I doing? Like, I never do this. Why don't we do this? Why are we not celebrating? You are the glue that keeps your organization together. Do you remember when everyone ran to you during the pandemic? We're like, we don't know what to do. And you're like, we don't either, but I guess we're going to figure it out. Like, you are saving the day all the time and we never celebrate it. We're always putting out fires and then we're running to the next thing. So if you forget nothing, if you don't remember anything else, just the practice of how are you celebrating yourself more and how are you celebrating your staff more is one great and easy way in which you can make work suck less. Sweet?
All right, so let's talk about how we're going to spend the next hour together. The first thing that we want to do is explore HR systems that are inherently broken and ineffective. So we're going to identify what those are and why they're broken and ineffective. Then we want to discuss why we need to focus on humanity and empathy. So these words are being used a lot. They're becoming buzzwords for us. And the reason why we're going to talk about them today is because we're still struggling on how to implement those into our systems. And so that brings us to our final point, is that we're going to identify ways to infuse humanity and empathy into those HR systems. We're going to give you tangible takeaways of how you can start small and then grow to big strategic interventions to basically change these systems that need to, and we'll talk about why in a moment. But before we get there, we got to do some definitions just so that we're all on the same page. So HR systems, HR, I hope we're all familiar with. That's why we're here today. But I want to talk about the word system. So this is the definition of a system, a set of principles or procedures according to which something is done, an organized framework or method. So sometimes in HR, when I say system, we automatically jump to HRIS. We think of any software that we actively have purchased and are using and managing. But when we look at the word system, it's much broader than that. It's everything that we have determined the way that we do work. And right now, for the first time in probably the 15 years I've been in HR, I mean, we've seen since the pandemic that everything is being challenged. Like I remember when I first got into HR, every year we would have like a focus area. Like, oh, we're going to focus on diversity. Oh, we're going to focus on safety. Oh, we're going to focus on some laws that are changing. Now, it's like all of those things are in flux at one time. We're talking about all those things. And so now we have this unique opportunity to revisit all of them, which is extremely overwhelming. But it's a beautiful opportunity. And so we're going to start by talking about some technology-based systems, since that's where our brain goes, but then how those lead to even bigger systems of how we work in HR.
So we're going to go through 3 different systems now. So if you feel pain when you see these systems, just give us a nod. Just give us a nod when you see this. So let's start off with applicant tracking systems. Anybody? Applicant? The way in which you apply. When was the last time you applied for a job at your organization? Do you know how painful it is where you have to submit your resume and then enter all of your employment history? The next slide, you're like, oh, I just hate this so much. Well, when we were doing our studies, we found out 92% of people are not finishing their application. They're just leaving. They're just leaving really quickly. And Gen Z, even faster, right? Like, just like, it's not even worth it, right? And it's the reason is it's so many clicks. It's so many clicks to get through something. 51 is the average. Even if you do 30, that's still so many. So it's Amazon. How many clicks to buy something? 2, maybe 1. Like, so just this idea of like how much pain it is just to apply for a job is something we have to actually address. So a challenge I would throw out to you, we usually do this if we have more time, is I would challenge you with your staff to apply for a job. See if you can even find the application. Do you know where it is? Not on LinkedIn. I'm talking about like on your website. Do you even know where it is? How long does it take? Is it enjoyable when you actually participate in it? Or is it just a lot of pain and suffering?
And I think that 92% really caught us because of the simple fact that we're looking for talent. And sometimes we can't find that in what's coming in through the applications. And now I'm telling you there's a 92% that were interested, and you're only getting to pick from the 8% because they got bored halfway through, which are usually passive looking job seekers that are like, my job's okay, it could be better. So what's out there? And then you've lost my interest, or it's too hard, or I have to go find something. Like I remember when we were running it a couple of times, people would be like, I need a resume. I can't find my resume file. I haven't updated my resume file. So done. And so it's just an interesting kind of concept. The second one I want to talk about is employee monitoring software, which quarantine actually brought even more so to the forefront. Employees like to call this bossware, and about 60% of companies had admitted putting this into place. And for good reason. You know, we sent people home, and we want to make sure they were productive. So I should have a right to make sure I know when their mouse has gone idle, or if I want to, look at their camera to make sure I can check what they're doing, even though it's so creepy, right? So when I was in quarantine, my first exposure to this, so I saw articles about it and employees complaining about it, but I went to California to actually visit family. And I went to my grandmother's house, and my aunt was living with her at the time because that's how all the families were coming together so they could take care of each other. And I come in the house, and my aunt comes running down the stairs from her makeshift at-home office. And she goes, hey, Sam, I got a minute before I got to go back upstairs and start swirling my mouse again so they think I'm working. So I was just like, okay, this is a real effective system we put in place. But on the baseline, what is it saying to our employees when you're implementing something like that? And if you just Google bossware, you'll see the news exposés over all across the country are basically saying, our employers don't trust us. Mm-hmm. And they're doing this because they don't trust me as an employee. They don't trust that I actually am going to provide value to them or that I'm worth something.
And then the final one, and trust me, there's many systems, but this is one of the ones we're going to be covering, is employee surveys. So how many people hate employee surveys? Raise your hand if you just like, how many people actually work on the employee survey? Right? Look at all the people that work on them, right? So I mean, so like there's a frustration, right? And it's not that people hate the actual survey. They hate the fact that they give all this information and then it falls into a black hole, never to be seen again, right? They talk about, employees want feedback, right? 77% of employees want feedback. They always want it, but it's never received. or they get it back like 6 months later. You filled out the employee survey and now this is what we're rolling out. And you're like, I already forgot about what I even filled out back then. So there's so much money going into these employee surveys that are then not even actionable, and we're wasting hundreds of thousands, if sometimes millions of dollars on this stuff. When people want feedback immediately, how do we do that? And where can we find empathy to do this more quickly? That's what we're going to explore today.
So I think this is a great time to pause and just talk about why these systems were created in the first place. Because I like to just think that for the most part, no one was being malicious or mean or wanting to make people think that we don't trust them. There were logical reasons why we use these. Like applicant tracking systems, it's because you can't do everything yourself, right? We had to kind of multiply ourselves, especially if you started as an HR department of one or are still an HR department of one. But at the end of the day, we keep adding things, and they come from mostly a place of fear. You know, we're afraid we're going to get sued. We're afraid that an employee's going to take advantage and work the system. We're afraid that we're going to lose our jobs because we hired somebody that was bad, or maybe someone's getting away with stuff and we're not managing that process correctly. Our leaders are afraid. We spend most of our time doing risk management, and what we have found now is that these systems were built from fear and they lack empathy. They lack that humanity and the fact that we're not dealing with widgets in the workplace, we're dealing with people. And if you think back on HR and the history of HR, and if you went to the National SHRM conference, they have this beautiful timeline that they put on that like 3-mile walk between the convention centers, I think to make it more leisurely or enjoyable. But they showed the timeline of human resources and how it evolved from the SHRM perspective. But what I found really fascinating is that when we go back, like we were called personnel supervisors. We evolved out of a secretarial administrative role where they took all the people operation tasks and put them there. And then we kept throwing things there, and anything where we were concerned about our people, it went there. And it evolved. Rather than us strategically going in and saying, what do our people need? How do they get to be seen and heard so that they can show up at their best? And we can see them engaged and have that potential that allows us to have those workplaces that we're dreaming of.
Can you even comment on the California SAG strikes that are happening right now?
Oh, yeah. So I think it's really interesting to watch the strikes that are happening out in California if you watch the social media clips. This is what I love about social media is we get access to so many things that we wouldn't see because we would always rely on the news putting them out there. And so I saw this clip of the protests happening outside of Netflix, and the flight attendants union actually had joined them. And it basically was this cry where they were talking about like the flight attendants came out because they wanted to show the corporations that they should be afraid of them. And the flight attendants even said, hey, we're starting here, but we're coming for you, talking to their corporations. And I thought, wow, now we have this blasting back and forth of fear and fear. That's another level of divisiveness that we're seeing. We're seeing all kinds of divisiveness. So it's just surrounding us. And how do we break that?
So part of the reason why we're doing this, or why we put this together, this workshop, is like the reality is like it's changing. And I don't think a lot of companies are prepared. By 2030, Gen Z is going to be 30% of the workforce. Gen Alpha is going to be 5 to 10%. And they do not tolerate a lot of BS. Like if you notice the Great Resignation, they drove that whole thing, right? Like as soon as they started being treated badly during the Great Resignation, they just left. And then all of a sudden, like millennials and Gen Xers and boomers were like, you can just leave? Like, I didn't even know that was a thing. I think I'm just gonna go with you. Like, you just didn't even know that that was a thing. But Gen Z's, like, their level of patience for BS is so low. And they expect a certain level of emotional intelligence. They expect diverse workplaces. They expect a certain level of inclusivity. They expect you to be able to communicate and be actual strong leaders that, you know, balance both healthy masculine and healthy feminine leadership like techniques, right? And I think a lot of us are like, well, you know, we don't have time to do that yet, but at some point we'll do it. If you don't start to infuse these in, you're gonna become obsolete. You might still be around, but you're gonna be like Blockbuster or Sears, like just not really that relevant to actual workplaces. And I say this all the time, you know, Steven Johnson says the future's where people are having the most fun. What are the organizations that are having the most fun? What are the organizations that are tackling the most interesting issues? What are the organizations that have the most emotional intelligence? That is where a lot of Gen Z is going to gravitate to if you're trying to bring in that type to your workplace.
And the other thing that I just want to throw out there with these Gen Z, the other thing that they've shifted for us is one of the statements that they made is, if I'm not going to find that out in the workforce, I'm going to create it. So we're seeing this boom again of entrepreneurs, of freelancers, of independent contractors, of them coming in and saying, hey, can't we just have a contract and then I get to control my hours and the way that I work? I've never seen so many independent contractor agreement templates that are so easily found on Google now, and that's because of this trend that's happening. The other piece that I just want to plant with you before we move into our first strategy is earlier this year we were on stage and we actually had somebody from the audience challenge us about what we were talking about as far as the new strategies, because they were thinking about their current workforce and the current generations that work there. We know generationally that your boomers are not like your Gen Zers. The attention span, the savviness with the technology, when they're filling out an application is completely different than when a boomer's filling out an application. That's there. What I want to challenge you with is, if you're not having a labor shortage where right now you're actively recruiting Gen Z, think about 5 to 10 years from now, 15 years from now, when you have retirement starting to happen, when you won't have a choice and you have to start succession planning. What does the future look like for you? And if you're in the wheelhouse that you're going to retire, because I know we have HR practitioners that are really excited about that because it's been a rough couple of years because work has sucked. Think about the legacy. Even if you're just planting seeds with those that are going to be there after you, how are they going to be prepared? Because you don't want them living through that chaos of what to do next and how to fill and have the organization survive, because there's the people there to actually do the work. You know, that's what all those strikes are about. We do the work. Go ahead and do the work without us. And so we're going to see that even kind of come up, passive aggressively through our hiring processes. So I want to start this section by having you imagine that there is an agency out there that measures your culture and making sure that you're a great workplace. Like, just like we worry about the EEOC, say there's like some employment agency that does this. And say they come in as an investigator because they hear that you might have a bad work environment. And so they come in and they do their wonderful, I'm going to pick my random dozen of employees. You don't get to pick your shiny golden ones. And I want to talk to them. And the one question they ask is, if your employee had to describe your company in 3 words, what would they say? And would a concept that's around the idea of trust even come up in those top 3? Would it make the top 10? If it does, I highly want you to share that at your tables at lunch and maybe come and talk to me and Jeff, because those are the strategies we want to share as we're traveling. But also share with each other. And if it doesn't, then what do we need to do to fix that? Because trust is an essential piece here. So let's talk about where we start to break down the trust concept. Sometimes we break trust in the hiring process before we've even talked to a candidate using our job postings. So here you see this manhole with a manhole cover, and the application says Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles now hiring. Inquire within. So if you had similar dreams as me as a child, where you get to be a gigantic turtle and eat lots of pizza, sounds pretty good. What if I was going to say that this is a job for a sewage city worker position? And this is how I posted it. There are a couple times I've seen job postings. In fact, there was one major retailer, or actually restaurant, that used to have a dishwasher position. And when you read it, it sounded like you were going to change the world. I almost wanted to apply. And actually, I teach adjunct at the local college, and a college student showed it to me and was like, what is this job? Isn't it just dishwashing? So they're getting suspicious about those things. And I think even early on, when I was taught recruitment strategies very early on, I was taught to sell a dream. Make it sound a little sexier than it actually is. So maybe somebody applies. So what happens if we actually are transparent and we start establishing trust through this job posting? So Jeff found this job posting from the 1900s for an Antarctic expedition. And it says, men wanted for hazardous journey, low wages, bitter cold, long months of complete darkness, constant danger, safe return doubtful, honor and recognition in case of success. Real posting, it actually happened. He found his men. Those images are from the historical archives of this expedition. And so this shows that even though this is a harsh transparency, it found cultural fit, like right on the dime. They lived to have success. They lived to have recognition because now they're in the history books. So this is a little extreme, but it starts to plant the seed of we can be more transparent than we actually think we can. Because I think a lot of the times we assume we can't air that. That's like our dirty laundry. But there's an appreciation in the honesty.
Also, I think we have to understand that, they didn't die because of this job posting, right? Like there's so much BS right now around how to trick people into getting jobs. And as I speak to a lot of Gen Zers all the time, and they're like, this is not the job I thought it was going to be. All the time I hear this over and over again. And they feel duped because of how it was described to them through all of the interview process. So actually being transparent and being like, listen, the reality is half of your job, you're going to be bored. And then I might find 10 or 20% where you might be more challenged and we can help you in that. They would rather hear that than be like, this is the best. You're going to love it here. And then all of a sudden they're super disappointed. Now, I'm going to show an example in a moment of what happens when you actually allow your staff to play, when you allow your staff to be creative and you show them a glimpse of what it's like to work at a certain place. So we found this Milwaukee Public Library. Like, I don't care anything about the Milwaukee Public Library. It's the middle of the Midwest. I've been in Milwaukee once. Who cares about it? Yet, on TikTok and Instagram, all of a sudden they started blowing up. Why? Why would a public library? Public libraries are boring, right? No. What they did was they allowed their staff to show their nerdy librarian ways, right? And they just started making all these ridiculous videos, just playing, a lot of times showing what they're already doing and really explaining why they love public libraries, why they love being a librarian, all these things like that. Just not taking themselves seriously, but also giving a glimpse into Milwaukee. Because of this, all of a sudden, recruitment shot up significantly. People came when they were visiting Milwaukee and would stop by the public library. Sam has friends that are following right now, and none of them have ever been to Milwaukee. This idea of allowing your staff to play as a way of not only recruiting, but giving a glimpse into what your organization is like. I think a lot of times we're constantly pretending to be like serious and professional and look at us. And you see like the stock photos of you on the front page and you're like, is that even us? Like, do we even do it that way when we're at their job? To actually show the personality of your organization significantly helps. Significantly helps because all of a sudden now you're providing a certain level of transparency of being like, hey, we're a bunch of nerds here. And if you're a nerd, you should hang out with us. So much better than being all generic. Too much generic out there. Let's start taking some risks. Now, what actually happens when you do this, and this happened at the Milwaukee Public Library, is by giving their staff an opportunity to take risks, all of a sudden they built much more trust, which included much more engagement, which actually reduced burnout significantly. When you are allowing your staff to be themselves, not that corny, authentic self stuff that people always say, because sometimes you're like, I don't want you to see all of me. You really shouldn't see all of me. But can you allow me to actually show what I really am good at? So a great question to ask your staff is, what is your zone of genius? What's the work where you forget about time? How can we have you do more of that work? Even if it's just for 5 or 10% more of the day, it actually exponentially helps their productivity across the board. So that's a question worth asking. What is the work that you love to do most? That is your most vibrant work. And what we're finding, especially when we spoke to a lot of CEOs, but we also found data around this, is that 55% of CEOs no trust is an issue. They know, but they also have no idea how to solve it. No idea. They have no idea where to start. They are concerned, but they're like, well, what should we do? I think maybe we should, maybe give people raises or something like that. And they're just throwing really bad ideas out there, just so many bad ideas. And I'm realizing more and more CEOs, not that smart, just not that smart, just not sometimes you're like, how are you in charge? So this is your moment as an HR staffer, as an HR manager, as an HR director to move the needle. This is your moment to impact and actually challenge them to infuse more empathy, humanity, and compassion because they don't know what they're doing. And they're making up a lot of quick things. You see this with Disney, with the strikes right now, and they're making horrible decisions that are not going to be able to repair relationships for a long period of time. So you have more power than you think. And you should utilize that power. You should leverage that power and know that you have that power because you are bailing them out. Because if you don't show up, probably a majority of the workforce is either going to become more disengaged or they're just going to quit. So recognize how much power you actually have. So this is what we're going to do now. So I learned this technique while I was doing campaign work where we were obviously not getting paid. We were volunteers. So we were making phone calls and we were knocking on doors. But before we did any of that work, we always sat down and asked, like, what are you doing here? Like, why are you here? Why are you working on this campaign? And we realized by sharing our stories, all of a sudden we started connecting with each other more. So I remember I was working on a campaign and we were fighting for healthcare at the time. And I remember leaving the office late at night at like 10, but I still saw people there, like a lot of my friends there. And as I was leaving, I had to turn myself around and turn back because I saw my friend Dana, who was suffering from cancer. And she was fighting for healthcare. So I was like, I know her story. And I saw my friend Samantha, and she was fighting for her mom. So I know her story. And the more that you actually know other people's stories, the more you're rooted into your organization. So that's what we're going to do now, is I'm going to ask you the question, why are you at your organization? Like, why did you join it in the first place? Or if you've been at an organization for a really long period of time, why do you stay? What is it about this organization as why you're so invested in it right now? So I want you to take a moment to think about what that is, right? What is the reason why you're at that organization? And then what we're going to do is we're going to break up into groups and share it. Sam, do you want to add something? So yeah, why are you at your organization and why do you choose to stay? Those are the two questions that I want you to explore at your tables. And we'll give you about 5 minutes to do that, starting now. All right, we'll give you about 30 more seconds, 30 more seconds. Oh, yeah, oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Are we ready? Okay, everyone. All right. All right. So go ahead and high five your group there, or air high five if you can't reach them from there. Give them a little. So, were there any stories that either you heard where you were like, "Oh, wow, that's awesome," or a story that you shared where you were like, "Oh, yeah, this is why I'm still at this organization. I haven't really thought about this in a really long period of time," that you would be willing to share out with the group? And I know this is tough, but the first person that does it, then it always opens the floodgates for everyone else. There we go. Let's go. Give them a round of applause, everyone. Yeah. Taking the risk. There you go.
So I think this is a good one for HR individuals, but my friend over here, forgot his name, but like Casey,
Casey,
he covered his
great
name,
guy.
like,
went to school with him.
He discussed how he stays at it. Well, he went to his organization because they pay him and they gave him a job, right? Which is the same reason why I'm at my organization. But he stayed because he's supported, and he said recently he went on vacation and it wasn't a nightmare when he came home You know, he didn't have like a full inbox and like this big long to-do list. And because I think, especially in HR, like, you know, there's so many times where you go on vacation, but you don't feel like you're on vacation.
Yep.
You're like, oh, I mean, that's just the way it is and where I work. And he's found an organization that supports that. I think that's really important, in particular in our field, but everywhere. I think we find that with exempt employees who feel that drain, that they can't really leave the office. And that's something we need to change.
I love that. How many people feel like when they go on vacation, they can't really be on vacation because they know it's coming back? Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. What else? Who else?
Yeah.
Oh, it's been a good 2 months.
You know, one thing that I just want to point out, as I was floating around and being nosy and the tables who kept talking rather than going silent when I approached them, you know, I appreciate those of you that were willing to be raw with your peers in this space, because for some of you, work does suck. Like, it sucks. And if the pay is really good, it makes it a little bit bearable. And I want to say two things. Number one, being raw in this space is the best place to network, because I guarantee if someone in here gets wind of a great HR opportunity in the local area, they're going to call you up if they think it's a good fit. Number two, don't underestimate the power of compensation if you are there just for the money. You know, sometimes the compensation hits that point where you're able to provide for the people that you love. You're able to take them on the vacations that you've always dreamed of taking them on, even though you might not be able to disconnect. But understand that there's sometimes a greater why that's connected on a personal aspect, and that's you connecting to your humanness, which we're going to talk about in a little bit more in a bit. But stay with that and know that. Yes, I think you should go find some place where you can really spread your wings and fly and soar, but don't underestimate that sometimes the value we bring is also our humanness, because when you're there in it, you connect with others who are in it too and help them find their way in an organization that maybe is not ideal because they're still trying to hopefully figure it out.
And infusing these questions, whether you're doing recruiting or whether you're doing an employee evaluation or heck, whether you're doing an exit interview, are really important. Talk about times where someone feels seen and heard, right? I was doing this same workshop or a similar workshop for the city of Rancho Cucamonga, California, right? And we're sharing, and this guy raises his hand, and I'm like, yeah, what do you do? And he goes, I just make maps. And then I was like, and then we dug deep more into it, and he goes, I don't realize, well, I guess there's this one story where a bunch of firefighters came and thanked me. And we were like, why? And he goes, well, there was a firefighter that died trying to save a family, and I made the map for the procession. And I didn't think it was that big of a deal because I was just making maps. It's not that, whatever, it's just a small thing. But the whole city of Rancho Cucamonga could come out to celebrate this person's life because of him. And him sharing that story, everyone else in the city did not know that story. Those are the types of stories that root you back into an organization. So finding those stories for yourself and finding those stories for your organization and sharing them out is significant in making work suck less. All right.
All right, we're going to change gears. We're going to talk a little bit about performance evaluations, which is another topic that we've talked about for, I think, since I got out of college. And even though performance evaluations maybe are not the best as far as the system goes, we know that we have to have them because they provide a feedback. But let's look at some stats. We know that 91% of companies conduct them annually. So even though we know that the system has been broken, it's probably one of the most popular systems that we've recognized have been broken, we're still doing them that way. And it costs about a Fortune 500 company $2.4 million per year in lost time. So all the paperwork and the processing, and when you have to chase down people because they're not doing their performance reviews, and then they're just filling them in. So it's resulting in a large amount of money and lost time. And then on top of that, only about 14% of those employees feel inspired or an increase in their morale after they get their review. So, looking at kind of the pluses and minuses there.
So I love this quote. In this review, I'll pretend I can accurately characterize you with a 2-digit rating, and you pretend this is a meaningful process of self-reflection. right? Like that's kind of the process. How many times have you been giving performance reviews and you're like, well, I've already given up enough 5s. I don't have any more 5s to give. You get a 4 just because. Like, it's so arbitrary. Like, it's so ridiculous. So this is what we're going to do, and we'll need help. So people that have paper, if you could give paper to your colleagues, the people that are at your table, grab a piece of paper. If you can pass out some paper. If you don't have paper at your place, you can ask for some from some other people. But everyone get a piece of paper. And what I want you to do is I want you to write, I want you to write what you hate most about performance evaluations. Write the things you hate most. You absolutely hate. Write all the things that you hate most about performance evaluations. Go ahead and write it on that piece of paper. It will not go to your executives, so they will never see this piece of paper. Okay.
If you don't have a pen, you can just use blood. Just kidding. Totally kidding.
All right. What do you hate most? Write all the things that you hate most about performance evaluations. Oh man, look at that. Look at all those lovely dishes. Okay, all right. So you've gotten them down. So this is what I want you to do. I want you to go ahead, stand up, lift your piece of paper up. So go ahead, everyone stand up.
And
with
if you
your
did
piece
it
of paper.
mentally, if you didn't mentally, just stand up and hold your imaginary
Or hold
paper.
your imaginary if you're like, I don't have paper, but an
there you go.
imaginary piece.
Oh.
And we're going to give you some theme music. See if this works. Oh, I can hear it. Oh, there we go. All right. Now, what I want you to do is I want you to crumple up that piece of paper. I want you to throw it on the ground and then go ahead and stomp on it. Go ahead and stomp on it. Go ahead and stomp on it and then throw it at somebody. Go ahead, throw it at someone else. Throw it at someone else. Don't throw it in their eyeballs, though, but get your anger out of it. Get all of your anger. Thank each other and then have a seat. Have a seat. It's just a cathartic experience that we do. Do y'all remember this movie? How many people have seen this movie? Office Space? Oh, so good. You should totally see it if you're ever angry at work. Okay.
So I said that we use performance reviews because we know feedback is critical as part of the process. Everybody wants to know how they're doing. They want to have conversations. I own a very small company, but even I have to do performance reviews because they're craving that annual feedback. And so the question becomes, how do we change this? Because a lot of the times we haven't even looked at it because it's so overwhelming at the idea of rebuilding this system. And so where I want you to start is actually with yourself and that humanness piece that I threw out there. And I want you to think about these high trust factors that came from that high trust data that Jeff quoted early on. But they said that high trust organizations have similar things. One is whole person growth, vulnerability and transparency, recognition and appreciation. And so I want you just to take a moment and check in personally. What do you need in regards to feedback, in regards to your growth as a whole person? What do you need as far as appreciation, recognition, vulnerability, transparency? What do you need as an employee? Because sometimes we forget that we're so busy taking care of all the other employees. You're actually an employee. You get paid. So you have a say as well. What do you need as a department? Is your department struggling because they need more resources? What do you need as a human? Do you need to be able to take vacation that is vacation? So just take a minute, and I just want you to internally check in. And if you have something to write it down because it makes it real, even if you're entering it into your phone. And then do I have anybody who's willing to share with this group about what they need at any one of these levels? Yeah. Stability. That's powerful. Yeah. So stability of my own employment, of my department, of me even be able to take care of myself. Like, those are huge. What else? Yes. Knowing what value I bring. Ooh. That's exactly what we're after in the performance review. As an employee, like when I ask my employees what they want, that's all she wants to know. Do I actually bring value to your organization, or am I wasting your money? I've had my staff member ask me that. Yes. Autonomy. I know there's a couple other people that want that too. I heard them talking about it early on. Sincerity and appreciation. Yeah, you have people that thank you all the time, but it's when they're really those moments where they really see you and what you've done. Because answering a benefit question isn't just answering a benefit question. There's a lot of work that goes into that. What else? Anything else? Yes.
Here we go.
For bosses to actually listen,
Yep.
not this boss here.
Nothing.
Good. Yeah, to be heard. Absolutely. I say start here because it's easier to start advocating for ourselves. And when you start doing that, I guarantee that you're going to start to realize what you need is a lot of what everyone else needs as well. And so what I'm going to challenge you with is take that one thing that you need and translate it into one tangible action. Can I advocate for something? Can I share some feedback? Whether it's I feel insecure about my job because we're doing layoffs and all you keep saying is more is coming.
Yeah.
Does that mean more is us? Like at some point, do I not count at this table? You know, what value do I bring? We've had this happen. There's this spreadsheet that floats around about high performers that only certain people in HR can see. Am I on that sheet? Am I on a different sheet? Because I'm so distracted by doing those things. Can you ask a question? Can you ask for what you need?
And I think a lot of times we are like, okay, we need to fix this whole system, when it's really like, no, we just need to bring more humanity into the systems we already have. So we start here, you have this question for yourself, then you ask your staff, and then after you ask your staff, then you kind of expand from there. And that is how you can actually start to make that impact. Really small to big, rather than being like, we're going to change everything. So as we're wrapping up,
There's a slide you missed.
which one?
Oh, there's some slide. Okay. Is there one after that?
No?
Oh, yeah, it is. Sorry. Brain fart.
Sam got sad because this is one of our last presentations. So as we're wrapping up, I want to really emphasize these three main points, right? First, the idea of like, we have to let go of perfect. Perfect is where like burnout actually comes from. Play is the opposite of perfection. Perfection is rooted in ego, shame, constantly trying to be right, no autonomy, for example. But play, you're allowed to be more of yourself. So how are we doing that? And then how are we also embracing transparency and not BSing people, because people can read BS from a mile away. And then actually understanding, why are people at their job? Like, what are you doing here? Why do you stay? You've been here 20 years. Is there a reason why you continue to come back here besides the fact that you need a paycheck? And actually understanding people's motivations. Do you know your staff's languages of appreciation? Like, these are the questions you should be exploring. What are people's why? And then finally, what do you need? Let's start with what do you need, followed by what does your employee need, followed by what does the department and the whole organization. But starts with you. Figure out what you want, figure out how you want to receive your language of appreciation. And from there, then we can start to bring more humanity, compassion, and empathy back to work.
So here's that mysterious slide that I thought disappeared, but it's not. It's here. And I was very sad because this is our gift to you. So the QR code that's up there, Jeff and I have put together a resource page, one of which is a free 4-video course that's going to help you go through, if you like the talk about Milwaukee Public Library and how do we even start to do that for ourselves, we've created that for you, so that's our gift. The other piece of it that we're really excited about that's kind of been a need that we've identified after traveling for a year is that we've seen a link between burnout and disengagement and the systems and the structures. And so we're actively collecting data and doing a burnout assessment to look at how these things are connected. And so we're in the final phases of doing that. So if you go there, you can actually sign up and be one of the first people to receive that assessment and get access to some of the data we've been collecting and the results. And then we're also always looking for people who want to share about their pain points so that we can help collect even more research and data so we can help others. So other than that, Jeff and I are so gracious and grateful that you were here with us for our final time together this year. And I think we're right at the end, but we'll be hanging out during lunch for any kind of questions and hanging out. And thank you so much.
Thanks so much. Gift basket. Oh, thanks.